Carmelo Anthony case denied. Denied for a new motion. Man, I'm not really understanding why. I know that they saw that it was several mishaps in the trial. People have been withholding evidence. So what I'm to understand is supposed to be both sides. But what I don't understand is why they would try to hold evidence. Why would Carmelo Anthony and his family try to hold evidence? It just don't make sense. Now this stuff, this racist text messages came about after the Metcalf boys' dirty laundry got aired on social media. It seemed like everybody was just crooked in that case. Somebody was friends with dad. Dad was buddies with high school, the prosecutors from high school, old drinking buddies from college. Like, and then the most suspicious things, like the judge retired. Anyway, let's get into the content.
Emotions have been high throughout this case. Carmelo Anthony's supporters had hoped 2 days of testimony would lead to a new trial, but that was denied. Meanwhile, Austin Metcalf's family has fought to keep Anthony in prison. During that hearing, both sides heard disturbing and graphic details about both Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf's past.
I know that there's a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings right now, and a lot of that is because this is the first time that people heard a lot of this stuff.
My thing is, if Carmelo Anthony was so thirsty for blood, why wasn't it showed in the first trial? Like, why wouldn't they use that? This is not if they come up with something tactic. Like, I don't know. It's just hard for me to believe. The media plays so many tricks on people. It's just hard for me to believe.
Anthony's attorneys argued restrictions on public access, including limited seating and no overflow courtroom, violated his right to a public trial. And they said an agreement between the two sides to keep character information out of the trial fell apart, so Carmelo Anthony didn't take the stand to claim self-defense. A judge said after hearing and looking at all of the evidence, Anthony isn't getting a new trial.
And look at the judge. Judge looked like he's 100 years old and just stuck in his own ways. It's like, I wonder what, like, man, it's crazy. It's crazy.
His attorney, Russell Wilson, said, "We respectfully disagree with the ruling. The denial of our motion does not end this case. We will continue the appeal to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and pursue every legal remedy available to our client."
They're going to, it seems like Carmelo Anthony is going to have to take this all the way to the appeals, federal appeals, to the end. You know, that case has to come out of that county. It has to be tried somewhere else with a totally different jury. And you know what? It's going to even be harder because who don't know about the case? Social media has planted a seed and it grew into a great big old beanstalk. So everybody knows about the case. I don't know. It's just going to be difficult.
District Attorney Greg Willis says, "We respect and expected the court's decision denying the motion for a new trial. The jury's guilty verdict stands, and we remain confident in the process." The Metcalf family says it is not ready to speak publicly about the ruling. Pastor Bruce Carter, speaking for the Austin Metcalf Foundation, says both.
So now here we go. We got Officer Tatum, a junior, Officer Tatum Jr., talking for the white boys.
Families are living with the consequences.
Someone's child is in the grave and another person's child is facing 35 years. There are no winners. And if this foundation can save one group of kids and families from this pain, I'm all in.
The ruling ends Anthony's fight for a new trial in this courtroom. But for the two families forever changed by one deadly encounter, the emotional and legal battles are far from over. In Dallas, I'm Rebecca Lopez.
Education is one of the most powerful.
Yeah, man. unfortunately, they're going to have to change jurisdictions. He won't get a fair trial. Not there where he is. It's tainted. The world's tainted. And everybody's very opinionated.
From the jury that convicted Karmelo Anthony, now taking center stage as the Texas teen fights for a new trial after being found guilty of fatally stabbing 17-year-old Austin Metcalf at a high school track meet.
And Austin Metcalf's past just came out just a little bit more, and that little dude was like a menace. And he wasn't little, he was a big guy already. This guy was a menace. He's already been on probation for a bunch of racial shit. Him and his brother. Why didn't any of this come out in the trial? Why was all this concealed? And all that is real vital information that they're holding.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julie Banderas in New York.
And I'm Bill Malugin here in Washington. Julie, great to be with you as we roll into hour number 2 here. John and Sandra have the day off. This is America Reports. Both sides in this case are now revealing some really damaging evidence they agreed to keep from the jury as part of a gentleman's agreement. That includes text messages.
Why would anybody agree this? Why would anybody agree this? Karmelo Anthony saved a person from drowning. That is enough to show a part of his character. I think that's even more powerful than him getting into it with his girlfriend. Everybody gets into it with someone, who they've been in a relationship with, been intimate with. But I think him saving that life is more, it's more revealing to who he really is, his character. And I also believe Jet Metcalf, I believe the things that we found out about him is very important too, in this case too. This dude was a living terrorist and a racist already. And he said he couldn't help it. He didn't know that those terrible things was coming out of his mouth. Where'd you hear it from? Where did you get it from?
Is that prosecutors say show Anthony fantasizing about stabbing somebody, the defense resting earlier today before the state took the unusual step of putting its own lead prosecutor on the witness stand.
We have Fox team coverage for you. Donna Rotuno joins us just.
You know how crazy it is they put a prosecutor on the witness stand? How does that even work?
In moments right here.
The lead prosecutor. How does that even work?
In New York City. But first,
we send it out to correspondent Garrett Tenney, joining us live outside of the courthouse in McKinney, Texas. Hi, Garrett.
How do you know which energy supplier you can trust to save on your bills? Well, there's one supplier we can all.
Yeah, Bill and Julie, a lot of folks were surprised when Karmelo Anthony didn't take the stand in his own defense back in June. And today
a lot of people wasn't surprised. Typically in murder charges, the defendant never takes the stand. Ever. It hurts them more than it helps them.
Got a bit more insight into how and why that happened. This morning in court, one of Anthony's original defense attorneys, Toby Shook, testified that towards the end of the trial, we very much still wanted Karmelo to testify because we thought that was the only way the jury could see. That is why he used deadly force. Shook said that self-defense argument was important because they felt like they could convince the jury to go with a manslaughter conviction instead of murder. But after there was a breakdown over that unwritten agreement for both sides not to introduce any character evidence, Shook said Anthony didn't trust that prosecutors would keep their word if he took the stand, and ultimately.
What do you mean? Wouldn't keep their words? That's what. Man, that's why you gotta have a lawyer. You gotta have a representation. You got to try to understand. The law is a different dialogue, and speaking and all kind of shit. It's just different.
They chose not to do it. Here's Jonathan Turley weighing in on that decision.
In reality, the motions for a new trial, in my view, are fairly anemic. One of the arguments is that I would have testified, but my lawyers really...
Listen, man. Listen. No, most people do not testify in murder in their trial because it makes them more vulnerable on the stage, especially if you might have a couple character flaws. Right?
really didn't fully advise me on this stuff. That's going to be hard to make out.
We've learned that one reason both sides wanted to keep all of that character evidence out, Anthony's text about wanting to stab someone and Austin Metcalf's school disciplinary record, is because of how heated things were over this case and the public. And
man, hell no. We're going to display everything. We're going to display everything because even if you got into my psyche, right? I could be disturbed. Anybody could be disturbed. But you have to show his flaws. So, in order for them to show his flaws, y'all got to show mine. Man, fuck. It wasn't premeditated. Man, I would have never agreed to keeping any of that out of trial. It's just the court was already janky. The judge was already janky. The prosecutor was already janky. The guy, the alleged victim, he was janky. Like, no, I wouldn't agree to none of that. None of it. They were having court on the weekend where the rest of the world couldn't even keep up. No, I wouldn't agree to that. That whole trial should have been a mistrial.
The race of those individuals who were involved, and that's not something either side wanted to throw gas on. Just a little bit ago, the lead prosecutor, Bill Werski, testified about the threat environment around this case, saying people on both sides were going to work trying to get addresses for doxing. The Anthony's address was out. Judge Tucker's address was out. The volume, validity, and legitimacy of the death threats was unprecedented in my experience and in the law enforcement here's experience. This hearing is expected to finish by the end of today, but we are told that the judge is not expected to be making a ruling on whether or not Anthony will get a new trial in court today. That's going to be issued via an email announcement at some point over the next few days. Bill and Julie.
All right, Garrett Tenney.
It didn't even take a few days. Just one.
Reporting live outside the courthouse in McKinney, Texas this afternoon. Garrett, thank you. Julie?
Okay, we've got Fox News contributor Donna Rotuno here in studio with us. Okay, first, let's just talk about the damning evidence that was not subject to the jury, and that are those text messages.
So, yes, on both sides. There were text messages sent by the accused here, Karmelo Anthony, the convicted person in this case, and he sent text messages regarding...
No, I would have had to show Jet Metcalf's text messages just to prove how hateful he was. And that whole testimony would have gave them reasonable doubt, for sure, that it was self-defense. It would have definitely proposed a question. You know what I'm saying? Was he a victim? Was he the aggressor? That would have showed that.
Regarding stalking his girlfriend. His girlfriend had gone to the school that...
Ironically, that they're talking about Karmelo Anthony's flaws first. I bet y'all think that the system's broke, huh? No, it's made to be this way. Everything, they oil that machine perfect, and it's working. It's working perfect. Look at it. They're not even talking about Jeff Metcalf right now. Talking about Karmelo Anthony and how bad of a person he was. Paint the picture of this guy first. Boy, the media's something different, boy.
That day, claiming that he had been stalking her. He said, I'm low-key ready to lose it, or something along those lines. So that's very damaging in terms of his state of mind that day. Because remember, they tried to paint this as this sort of snap decision. He was in this tent and that he wouldn't think about what he was doing, and then the process...
Hey. We saw the video. He was in that tent. And those people did rush over to him like Death Row did, the dude that murdered Tupac. Man, them niggas rushed over to him. We saw the evidence. The video's out.
Prosecutor said, well, he was reaching into this backpack, had his hand on a knife, so it was premeditated. And obviously, those text messages go to his state of mind that day.
Right.
So those would have been damaging.
I want to talk about the prosecution's texts that they revealed. Yes. Anthony wrote about stabbing someone, like you just said, but I want to just actually quote his text messages because these are extreme.
Crazy, man. See how they play the game? If they're going over his shit first, later on in the news segment, they're not going to care about what Jeff Metcalf said or what he done. They're only allowing you to hear Karmelo Anthony's flaws first because they're trying to taint the way you think.
Extremely disturbing. He wrote, and licking the blood off the blade. Also, another text message sent hours before the killing.
Look at this white lady smirking to the right. She's smirking as the details come out. Just look.
Saying that he was low-key on the verge. This would have been critical evidence to be presented toward the jury.
It would have been critical, but would nothing have been more critical than this dude saying he's Hitler? He killed the nigger? What are you kidding me?
I understand that they had a gentleman's agreement. I don't understand why there would be a gentleman's agreement in a case such as this with such damning evidence.
Well, I think that's...
I ain't never heard of no gentleman's agreement. Ever.
The issue, right? So first of all, was there agreement? What was the agreement? What were the terms of that agreement? Because normally in cases, a lot of this character evidence does not come in depending on what happens in a pretrial posture. So judges will rule on certain things that can or cannot come in. And I think what they decided was they didn't want to make this about other issues other than what happened inside of that tent, which frankly was actually...
But you have to understand, it's gasoline. Whatever happened before that was under that tent is gasoline for that car to go. You can't just say, okay, this is exactly what happened. No. You have to understand the build-up to what happened.
Actually nice of the prosecutors because I think that information is very helpful in terms of his state of mind. Now, there were other things in terms of Austin Metcalf and some of the things he had done. And so maybe they thought in a balancing test, it was fair to just leave all of it out.
But it wasn't. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. And you know what? Karmelo Anthony's lawyers are stupid as shit. This gentleman's agreement goes to show you that they still set him up to lose. He really didn't have nobody protecting him. Because it was made to protect Jeff Metcalf more than it was Karmelo Anthony. Because the gentleman's agreement never took the murder, the capital murder or murder one off of the table. It never presented manslaughter. The agreement was made for him to lose anyway.
However, the problem becomes that agreement has to do with the prosecutor's case in chief, is my guess, right? The prosecutor's thinking, we're not going to put this in. But the minute the accused, Karmelo Anthony, takes the witness stand, that should not be a reason then to not bring that up because you're opening the door.
Right.
So therefore, it's fair game. If he testifies, I'm this nice, peaceful guy that's never had a problem, well, then they should have a right to then go into those things that he said on that day.
I mean, the defense basically turned the tables, though, and they basically claimed race, violence, racial slurs.
So the defense turns the tables, huh? Y'all see how they painting the picture? They started off with Karmelo Anthony's story instead of Jeff Metcalf's. The world is crazy. And the way I see it, these people are supposed to give you the news straight up, unbiased. They're not supposed to be on anybody's side. It just seems that way.
Made by Metcalf. So now the defense says, look, had we not had this deal in place, we would have put our client on the stand. I don't know if that's necessarily the greatest idea, though. I mean, would you have wanted...
I've been telling y'all, hell, prosecutors, hey, your lawyer don't be putting nobody on a damn stand. That is not the best way to handle trial. People don't really get on the stand, especially in murder charges.
To see him on the stand if you were his defense?
Well, I think the only option they had, I have been talking about this for months since it started. I was very surprised given the way the evidence came in. I thought the only chance they had
really was to paint him as having a...
Again, this is them painting a picture. Look, they got Jeff Metcalf smiling, looking like a good, wholesome white boy. They got Karmelo Anthony with a murder warrant, head shaved, looking like a damn convict. And this is the picture that they're trying to paint. They're painting it, to be honest.
Good character.
Or to have him get on the stand and say how he felt in that moment.
How do you justify those text messages?
Well, that's the problem. And that's why I think they decided not to put him on. Because if I'm the defense attorney, and obviously we didn't know about any of this, right?
No.
Had I known about this.
And the jurors didn't, and they should have.
Absolutely. Well, and they still convicted him.
Right.
So I guess.
That's what I'm saying. They still convicted him. So it's no way that I was going to let everything they were trying to conceal with Jeff Metcalf go unheard. No. If it was made for Karmelo Anthony to lose. This was made to not protect him. The only way to protect them was to ruin this guy, Jeff Metcalf's character. And all they had to do was unleash all of the damning evidence. You know, he's prior, him and his brother, that they put on the stand. You know, as a character witness. All that would have got thrown out the window, knowing if they've been on probation for a year for being calling themselves Hitler and nigger and just a whole bunch of just bullshit. That he said that he didn't know what was coming out his mouth when he was saying it.
The question becomes, to what end are you hoping that this happens? If he gets a new trial, now the evidence against him is just worse. And are they believing that because possibly prior statements or actions of Austin Metcalf would come in, would that in some way mitigate what Karmelo Anthony did?
Of course it does.
It just doesn't make sense, because if you look at Karmelo Anthony maybe didn't know those things about Austin Metcalf. So if he didn't know, then how would that have affected his decision in that?
Or do they believe?
Well, how do you know how it feels when a mob of anybody, it can be kids, and those weren't kids, by the way. Them white boys is big enough to be NFL players, college football players. So how do you know how it feels to be dog mauled? How do you know he wasn't being picked on prior? Like, people don't know. That's why I wouldn't have signed no gentleman's agreement. It was made for him to lose.
That if they were to have the chance to put him on the stand, that perhaps the sentence would be lessened. So maybe he would still get convicted because there is overwhelming evidence, but he wouldn't serve the 35 years. Maybe he would get something less.
Maybe a manslaughter, maybe
a manslaughter.
Something less serious than the murder charge that he was actually charged with. It's possible. But again, the fact that there was an agreement, I think this is a great lesson to any lawyer out there.
This is a great lesson. You know why? It's messed up. They're using his life for the lesson. But this shows that his lawyers wasn't on his team. Dude went to murder. He went to a murder trial without representation.
Have an agreement with another attorney. It should be on the record. You should let the judge.
And then it wasn't on the record. What kind of agreement do you get that's off the record?
No, we've decided not to go into these things, because now how does a judge determine what was actually part of that agreement? So we're going to see what happens here. If the judge gives him a new trial, and if he says, this sort of is like Bill Cosby. Remember back in the Bill Cosby days where Bill Cosby sat for a deposition only because he wasn't going to be prosecuted, and then they prosecuted him and used his words against him? Maybe they're going to say that this agreement was the same thing, and we'll see what happens with Karmelo Anthony. But it's an interesting legal issue.
Yeah, very much so. All right, Donna Rotuno, great to see you,
Thanks,
as always.
Julie, you too.
Yeah, man, it's like they railroading that boy. And so far, It's looking bad. They denied him for a request for a new trial. You know, they're gonna put in another request to get a new trial and possibly to move the trial. That's what I would be requesting. Anyway, this is Hellcat back, just giving y'all my 2 cents. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for daily content. Love what loves you. Take care of what takes care of you. I'm out.